E-L-O-E-J, a little aloha in our day. Spread a little aloha around the world at breakfast with Bob.
Thank you, Pajo Man. Welcome to Breakfast with Bob. Not quite Kona edition. My name is Bob Babbitt, brought to you by Quintana Roo, Form Smart Swim Goggles, Master Spas, Hoka One One, Premium Plus Sports, and of course, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. We just sent out 3,256 grants totaling $6.2 million. Keep challenged athletes in the game of life through sport. Our next guest coming off a huge win, Ironman 70.3 Eagleman. She's a two-time Olympian, and that was her first win, and I think her first race as a mom. Sarah True joins us. Sarah, how you doing?
Great, Bob. It was actually my first triathlon in over 2 years, which, that feels like an eon, obviously. For those of us who love to race, I felt a little rusty going in.
What's fascinating is what we've seen over the last couple of years. Obviously, the ante on the bike it's really gone up, right? The speeds have gone up and up. As you're coming off pregnancy and being a mom, how did you adapt to one? You're changing your body, the speeds that are happening in the sport. How did you have to change?
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun being on the side of things where you're a spectator watching somebody like Laura Phillip just absolutely dominate. What Kat Matthews and obviously Daniela are doing. It's just astounding. So it's a great motivation to kind of stay on top of things, and but ultimately all you can control is your own performance. It's a nice little carrot to know that the women are raising the bar all the time, and it's great for the sport. But ultimately, you just have to focus on yourself and your own progression. And for me, it took longer than maybe on paper I would have wanted to be back racing, but you can only be on your own timeline, right, Bob? So I was on my timeline, and thankfully we were ready to go back, ready to race when it felt right.
So what in this being back racing again, and obviously you can do all the training you want, but there's such a different vibe when you're racing. Jody Simpson's leading the swim, and then Sonia Catano. You guys are on the bike together. And I'm guessing because it's the first time back, that must have been so fun for you that you're out in front and you guys are like going back and forth and thinking, oh my God, I'm back.
Yeah, no, at one point, I mean, Sonia was so strong. Woo! So at one point I'm like, okay, do I go with her? Cause I don't know if I'm that fit yet. I had no idea going into this race, my level of fitness, one of the great things about racing is it's a good gauge of where you are, where your training is. But before you go in, you don't know.
No.
So I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Do I go with her? And I'm like, you know what? This is racing, right? Sometimes you just have to ignore the power meter. You just see the woman up the road and go a little harder than you maybe want to. And if I blow up, I blow up. I'll know that was too hard for me. So it was really fun to be back, but also, there's you have that little voice inside your head. Is this harder than I should be going? Or, I don't know if I could do it. But then like the racer part of your brain's like, just be quiet. Let's keep on going. This is fun. This part of it is fun. Exactly. And you can't be thinking 2 hours down the road. You have to be in the moment and just getting the most out of yourself.
Well, and going, 4:03:52, that's, you're Tamara Jewett's over a minute back. She had a great run, but did you feel while you were running, you're like, you got away from Sonia pretty quickly. What did you feel during the run? Okay, I'm in control here. This feels good.
Bob, I felt very much in control, but I got this really nasty Charlie horse in my calf.
Oh no.
And about 5 miles in, and I just have to stop and stretch it out. Like, I felt pretty good up until that point. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to kind of limp my way through a half marathon. So I didn't know if it came back to that extent where it just seized up. I think Tamara would have definitely, she would have blown the doors off of me. But I didn't think I had it until I crossed the finish line, just hoping that I could get through it. That's racing, right? Sometimes the unexpected happens and we have to figure out how to pivot, how to just get through if we have to. I'm glad it worked out okay, but there were moments that was a little dicey there on the run.
Well, it's one to come back after a couple years off and being a mom, and then to just get through the race, potentially podium, but to win your first time out, that's pretty cool.
Hey, I mean, I would love to say that it was all carefully planned and orchestrated, but it wasn't.
None
No.
whatsoever. Now, was Benny there?
No. So I drove down from New Hampshire, and on the way down, it was probably about 11 hours. So I didn't think that bringing, a 10-month-old baby and my runner husband who hates car trips along with me, it didn't seem like the best idea.
No.
Yeah, no, I made it a solo endeavor.
So what's next? What's the rest of your year look like?
Oh, at this point, I'm definitely taking it one race at a time. But I am signed up for Ironman Lake Placid. Please send me all of your notes. It's one of those, I'm trying to get some of those classic US races in.
Yes.
So Eagleman, has this long history in the sport, super classic race. Lake Placid, I grew up in upstate New York. So it's kind of going back home, and very long history, great community support, absolutely beautiful, brutal course, granted. Yes. So hopefully I can find a little bit more strength and endurance over the next few weeks. And then after that, I don't know, more races.
Well, one thing that you are in St. George, right? The 70.3 Worlds. That you qualify for that with Eagleman? No.
So I did qualify, but
yeah.
Bob, the award ceremony was at 4.
Yeah.
I was in the car. I think I was in New Jersey at that point, because right after the race, I had to get back home.
Of course, you're a mom.
It's because I'm a mom. Yeah. So I missed the award ceremony, and so I don't have my St. George slot.
Wait,
yeah.
You don't get your St. George slot because you didn't hang out, or you?
Yeah, because I didn't hang out. Yeah.
I don't know about that. That doesn't smell right to me.
I mean, it is what it is, right? So I knew ahead of time. Yeah, it's just, I was not feeling, super confident going into the race. I'm like, do I book another night? I'm like, well, I have a baby back at home. I want to see him, but also do I want to spend another, that money for a hotel room? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm in thinking about college education for this young man mode. Let's drive back home. So I only booked 2 nights of a hotel. Yeah. But now in hindsight, I'm like, well, I should have stuck around another day, had a little bit more mommy time, by myself in a hotel room. But it is what it is. So no St. George slot. Hopefully whoever it rolled down to gets to go and just absolutely enjoys the experience.
Well, and your little one isn't even a year yet, right? Is it just a month or so away?
Yeah, so he's 10 months right now. He's almost 11 months. Yeah, he's still crawling around. He's pretty fun.
Just being able to, because we've seen so many women have success after they've had babies. What was did you and your coach work out some sort of plan to come back slowly, or just what was the setup?
Yeah, so this is so my coach is Dan Lorang, and basically once I told him that I was pregnant, we decided that the best thing for me was just kind of a train as you feel, no structured training, and then once I got back to the point after having a baby, just take things on my own pace, because I know my body really well at this point. But then, as any parent will tell you, half the battle is just having time. So I had to get to the point where I could have consistent time to myself. My body felt great pretty soon after, but it was just a matter of figuring out a schedule with Ben balancing his career. And it wasn't until early April, I think that Dan messaged me and he says, okay, I've been looking at your training, because I would upload my training, very loose training on Training Peaks. And he'd look at it and be like, okay, now is the time for you to be back into structured training. So we were only in structured training for maybe 10 weeks before this race. But, the benefit of years of endurance training is that I know kind of what to do. I wasn't doing super hard stuff, but really just trying to find that consistency, trying to find a rhythm with this other human being who really just threw a little bit of a complication into what my training schedule used to look like. Yeah.
I mean, obviously you've done transition before. When you went from, and your transition was so quick, going from you two-time Olympian, fourth place 2012, and then 2016, not the games you wanted, but you transitioned so quickly to 70.3 and having success in that. What was the toughest part about that adaptation, going from being a person who's a gel, I don't think I'm going to be out there long enough to need a gel, to, oh my God, I'm going to be out there. Because our sport is so weird. You go from doing something that's 2 hours to something that's 4 hours. It's not like you jump from a 5K or from, or similar to someone like Ben's dealing with, going from short to all of a sudden, I got to go run marathons. How did you make that transition?
Oh, well, I think that's one of the great parts about our sport, is that we do have so many different events, and there's always more to learn. So I've been in the sport for obviously years before I made the transition to long distance racing. And I loved the idea that now I have to think about being aerodynamic and like riding a TT bike and holding that and thinking about nutrition in a whole nother way. So all these things that I hadn't done as a short course athlete, it was like I was discovering a new sport. And I absolutely love that about triathlon, is that, I mean, what's next? Maybe I need to jump into some Xterra or something, because then I have to start
Western States.
There you go. There you go. So it's really cool that we have that ability. But then again, you look at Christian Blumenfeld, and that is a quick transition.
You mean going from Olympic gold to winning Ironman World Championship on a really tough course?
Oh, yeah. So mine was, that was a couple of years, whereas his was a matter of months. But it does show that, there is overlap. They come from, a famously high volume program. Short course racing, we tend to have pretty high volume. So actually the number of hours I train over the course of the week didn't really change. It's just, what it looks like. So my bike was longer, there was a bit more emphasis on, strength endurance instead of speed, but the actual number of hours I was training, the number of sessions I was doing decreased. The number of hours of training was pretty much similar. So, yeah.
When you went to, I think, was your first 70.3 Chattanooga? I think it was Chattanooga.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get second there. Did you surprise yourself, the fact that you were jumping into that longer distance, or did you feel that, okay, this is sort of where I should be?
Well, I think a lot of short course athletes know that they could do probably a pretty decent job at halves, just based on the training we do. The question is whether or not you can then jump up to Ironman. That's a much bigger jump than going from 70.3 to Ironman.
Right.
The short course, I mean, you look at, Taylor Knibb, for example, like if you're a really strong athlete in the short course, you could probably do a pretty great 70.3. I think what surprised me, Bob, is just how much I enjoyed it.
Yes.
That was the part that did surprise me, is that, and you see this with short course racers all the time. They go up in distance, and it's so different. You're used to this really dynamic style of racing, the loops, and it's very tactical. And then all of a sudden, you're in TT position, and it's slower pace. Yeah. There aren't as many spectators. There's no, not as much media coverage. It's just very different style of racing, and not all athletes who go up in distance enjoy it. But I'm used to doing a lot of solo training, so I liked being out there kind of, by myself with some other people around to push me. But yeah, it's a totally different feel of racing.
Well, and then your first Ironman was Frankfurt.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you get second there with, I think 2:54 marathon. That's pretty damn impressive. First time out. And like you said, the solo stuff you sort of like. So I'm guessing that Frankfurt experience was pretty special for you.
Yeah. Well, again, you don't know if you're going to like an Ironman until you do an Ironman. Because none of us do it in training, or at least most of us. I've yet to meet somebody who just casually goes out for an Ironman for fun, distance, training day. No. So until you actually do it, you don't know what it's going to be like. Yeah, it was hard, but I enjoyed it so much more than I thought. And it was, it's you get insight into such a huge part of the sport that you didn't, like, I had seen from the outside. Like, I've always been a fan of the distance and the racing, but then to actually do it yourself, completely different experience, obviously.
And then you go from that to Kona, your first Kona experience, which was also awesome, right? You get in a fourth in your first Ironman and first Ironman World Championship. And the woman who passes you with about 4 miles to go, Annie Hogg, gets third that year, and then the following year goes on and wins the whole thing. That you got to be thinking, oh my God, this is. I love the depth of the women's racing and how it seems to be getting stronger and stronger every day. When you look at the Olympic side of it now, who do you see as some of the top women who we're going to be watching them at 70.3 in Kona in the years to come?
No question, Taylor Knibb. I think Flora Duffy. I think after Katie Zaferes has her baby, I think I would love to see her jump into some 70.3. That I think she's going to do really well with that. Would Georgia Taylor Brown want to? I don't know. There's some really strong women who are good in the swim, bike, run, and it's just a question of whether or not they have the interest. But I know somebody like Taylor Knibb has said straight up that she wants to do Kona someday, and she is gonna just blow the doors off of people. I can't wait for that day.
Sometimes when people have an experience like you had in Frankfurt, where you're leading by 7 minutes, you're a mile or a K from the finish, and your body basically shuts down. And when you have an experience like that, people either look at it and go, oh my God, I got to avoid getting to that point of, I got to avoid pushing myself because I don't want to go there again. Or they go, you know what, you don't find out where your body can go until you take it there. And it always amazes me when we see people in races who come off the bike in 20th, run their way to 8th, and they do that over and over again. You never see them, get to the point where they're going off the front and being gutsy and making that move. How did you look at that experience?
Yeah. So, it's really interesting. We're still trying to figure out what happened. The best understanding is that, repeated heat events may have affected my my brain. So basically, there's a part of your brain that is like the thermostat. Right. And if you have multiple heat events, it kind of sets that set point lower and lower. So like my heart rate was not creeping up. Like I was on top of hydration and nutrition. So I did everything right. But my brain basically is like, nope, that's it. Well before I was actually in distress. So it's, intellectually, it's really interesting. It was very frustrating as an athlete because, that season, a few seasons ago, like that was happening to me in all these hot races. So it happened to me at Kona, it happened to me in Cairns, it happened to me in Frankfurt. And all I can hope for is that, maybe my brain has healed a little bit. Maybe I can handle, but I know that I have pushed myself. It's not even necessarily Frankfurt. It was the hot races prior to that. So being in heat distress at Kona the year before,
18,
in 18. Like I pushed through some serious dark moments, and as an athlete, I'm proud of that because we so want to push our limitations. But I also know that sometimes you pay the price for being that hard-headed and stubborn. So maybe my brain will never be the same. My ability to cope with hot temperatures will never be the same. We're only going to find out. But I exceeded my limitations that day and in Kona, and I have to look at that with pride instead of regret for the races it has cost me.
Well, I mean, 6 weeks after Frankfurt, you got second in Mont Tremblant. So obviously you bounce back.
Ooh, that was a rough race.
Was that rough though?
Oh yeah. I don't recommend starting, that many 3 Ironman races in the course of a short period of time when, you keep on passing out in races. And yeah.
Did you pass out again at Mont Tremblant?
No. But in Cairns and then in Frankfurt. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the hard part is finding races. It's hard to, I want to go do the Ironman World Championship. Well, it's going to be 100 degrees. It's not like, what are you going to do? You either have to do it or.
I am an eternal optimist. So for better or for worse, it's a question of whether or not you can still be realistic, but also optimistic. And trying to find that balance where I think I was skewed a little bit too far in the optimism and wasn't quite rational with how I approached that, like going into Kona a few years ago, where my coach at the time, after Frankfurt, he's like, Sarah, the best course of action right now is for you to give your brain, your body some time to heal, pick a fall Ironman race, qualify for the following year, just skip Kona this year. And I was too stubborn. I should have listened to him, because I like I said, I wanted it so badly that I wasn't able to separate the emotion from, how the situation actually was.
Well, and the hard part is that it's easy to say back then, well, wait till next year. And as we found out through COVID, there wasn't a next year or a next year after that, right?
Exactly.
It's been 3 years.
Right.
Is that a goal of yours to get back to Kona?
Like I said, I'm taking this every race at a time. As the temperatures start to kind of creep up this summer, and we'll see how my body reacts. I don't want to go to Kona if I'm going to have a repeat, where I can't handle the heat. My brain won't let me. But I love Kona. No matter what, I will be there. I am going to be there. I'm affiliated with the Zwift Tri Academy team. So either I'm on the sidelines for both days, or I'm on the sideline for one day and racing the other day. But no matter what, I'm going to be in Kona. So we can catch up there in person.
One of my favorite stories is when Ben came over with you for the Kona experience, right? Your professional running husband, and talk a little bit about his experience of running in that heat.
Oh my goodness. So he gets off the plane and it's just nonstop complaints about the heat and humidity.
And you've got a race. You've got a race.
Oh yeah. So he would come back from a short run, 5 miles, something like that, flops down on the carpet in the AC in our little hotel, our little room. He's like, oh, this is so hot. This is so terrible. I don't know why anybody would exercise in this, why anybody wants to. I'm so miserable. I'm like, Ben, I have to run a marathon off of the swim and bike in just a few days. Please, this is not helpful. So finally he got the point where I'm like, you're not allowed to complain anymore about the heat for your little 8-mile run, because I am going to this is not helpful.
So the first time we were in Kona in 1981, and I wasn't the best ocean swimmer, right? And I'm with some friends of mine, and we're standing there at the pier as the waves are breaking over the wall, right? This is the day before the race. And my friend looks at me and goes, I think drowning would be the worst way to die. Like, that isn't really helpful right now. You know, why you take that to somebody else? Yeah, my confidence level's here anyways. I don't need the drowning thing coming into this.
Yeah, sometimes people just don't think.
They don't get it. And when people become parents, when they come back from a workout or a race, and sometimes I had a bad workout, all that goes away as soon as you see your little guy, right?
Oh yeah, I mean he doesn't care. He doesn't care how tired we are. Like we can just be flopping down on the ground. He'll just crawl over us and over and over. You know, you just have to forget about the session, forget about the race, whatever it is, and you just have to be present in the moment, which is really nice. Yeah, it's a good way to get in some extra training. Following this little crawler around, trying to make sure he's not eating the dog food, things like that. Yeah.
Now, what is Ben getting ready for?
So BAA 10K is at the end of the month. Yep. The big race of the year is New York City Marathon again, I think. He'll do some road races this summer. Yeah. So we're trying to find a good balance between our race schedules. So far, so good.
That's very cool. Well, Sarah, I look forward to seeing you in Kona, either racing or not racing. You'll definitely need to come to our Thank God I'm Not Racing party on that Friday night.
Only if I'm not racing.
No, it would be the day after the Women's Day. You get to put medals on people for eating poo-poos and just hanging out on Friday night.
I love it. Count me in. And I promise I won't complain about the heat. Or the ocean, you know, the waves.
You know what? You can, because the women, if you're racing, the women will be done. So you can complain all you want, because it's just the guys who are racing on Saturday. Who cares?
That's true. Well, let's be honest. It's hard for spectators too.
Oh, cool. It is a
my goodness.
Spectator deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was out in St. George. Tim Dunn and I were out all day, you know, cheering on the athletes. It's really exhausting being out in the heat, cheering people on. They had no sympathy for us, you know, that it was so much fun though. I absolutely loved being out there. But yeah, I might have to moderate my Friday night party at the Thank God I'm Not Racing party, because I know the next day will be a big day for me, you know, out in the course cheering. I bring it 100% with my cheering.
A lot of people come right from the party and wear their medals to the start of the race the next day to watch. That will be you.
I like sleep too much.
Sarah, it's always such a pleasure. I love the fact that you win your first race as a mom. That is very cool. I think that's a very short list of people who've actually won their first 70.3 after becoming a mom. We'll have to check that out.
Hey, whatever list it is, I'm probably in pretty good company. So
you are very good company. Appreciate it. Sarah True has been our guest, everybody. Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Sarah, you are the best.
Thanks, Bob. It's such a pleasure.
Take care. See you in Kona.
Yeah.
See you, everybody.